And of course, my classmates are just rolling through their paragraphs, right? We get through the first row, get about halfway through the second row, then I start thinking, how can I get out of here? We got quite a few young people in the audience. Young people, if I'm trying to get out of class, where's the first place I'm going? Bathroom. Bathroom, right? How about this? If I can't get to the bathroom, where's another place to go? Nurse, you know the game. You know what? It was actually early on in the school year. It was actually still the month of September. My teacher and I already had some tension between us. So I didn't think she was going to let me out to the bathroom or the nurse's office. But when it got to the top of my row, I said, what can I do to make this easier on myself? So I tried something. Maybe some of you have tried this. I said, well, maybe if I can figure out where the person in front of me is reading, right, what paragraph they have, then I'll count ahead in the paragraphs, figure out which paragraph I'll have to read, then I can familiarize myself with the more difficult words. Show of hands, anybody ever done this before? Oh yeah. But the problem that I had was that I was so afraid about what was getting ready to happen to me that I had no idea where they were in that story. But eventually it comes to me. My teacher says to Derek, will you please read your paragraph? She has to help me find my paragraph. And I began to do what we're going to call reading. I'm stumbling through every word. Every syllable is painful. And I get about 3 lines in, and someone on the right-hand side of me started laughing out loud. So eventually my teacher, she puts me out of my misery. She says, stop, whole class goes quiet. And my teacher, we had a student teacher that used to come to our class every day. She used to sit at a table in the back of the room. So my teacher stands up at her desk in front of all of my friends, in front of all of my peers. She says very loudly to the student teacher in the back of the room, she says, take this boy out in the hall and see if he knows how to read. Take this boy out in the hall and see if he knows how to read. Now, how do you think that makes me feel?
Hell.
Bad, right? You know what made it even worse? The student teacher was really cute. We got in the hallway. It was from that encounter that I ended up getting my first testing done, my first evaluations done. And the first label I was actually given was that I was neurologically impaired. And the first thing that was done for my neurological impairment was that I was placed in a resource room. My resource room was a teacher's storage closet. Right?
Oh, no.
Yeah, I know, man. Let me tell you. I am a part of the first generation of people to pass through what we now refer to as special education. Right? The law was passed in, 1975? I was born in 77. It's like they knew I was coming. But a big part, I think, of what the experience of going through special ed was for a lot of my peers, the folks who were part of my generation, was that, we were the generation that was coming out of the mass breakdown of institutions that housed a lot of people with disabilities. Let us never forget that there was a time in the United States when it was actually illegal for people with disabilities to go to school with everybody else. And so I think a big part of what the experience was for me was like our schools were just trying to figure out, where do we put these kids? Right? Where do we put this entire group of students who our schools were really never designed to be able to support? So unfortunately, I had a lot of time where I was in classes in basements, classes in rooms in the end of the hall, in FEMA trailers permanently parked in the back of the school, right? Because they were just trying to figure out what to do with us. I was in that resource room. Eventually it was determined that my struggles with learning were so severe that I needed to be placed completely into special education. I was fortunate because I had a really good special education teacher. Her name was Miss Priscilla Yates. Miss Yates had a teacher's aide named Miss Norcia. Miss Yates and Miss Norcia were excellent teachers. In her class, I got a lot of one-on-one attention. We did a lot of drills. And because I had been subjected to more flashcards than should be allowed by law, academically I began to do better. But there was a real dark side to Miss Yates' class. And the dark side was that Miss Yates was the head of what we refer to as a self-contained special education classroom. And now, for those of you who have never personally been educated in a self-contained special education classroom, what that was like I had the same teacher, same teacher's aide, in the same room with the same kids for like 3.5 years in a row. I liken it to learning in solitary confinement. Right? And in that very separate, very segregated setting, a few things started happening. First, I started changing the language that I use to describe myself. I call myself things like dumb, stupid, crazy, right? Eventually, Miss Yates' class, it gives way to middle school. By the time I get to high High school for me is like I'm living a double life. The reason is that I'm respected by a lot of my peers, but I'm still walking around feeling like I'm not as good as everybody else. Right? This really came to a head in the winter of my junior year. I think the winter of my junior year was significant because I knew I had one more year left, my senior year of high school. Then I had to go deal with what my mother always referred to as the real world. And in the real world, you got two options. You go to work or you go to school. In high school, I couldn't write a grammatically correct sentence. I didn't know how to use a comma. My math skills were subpar. I didn't think I was going to be able to go to college, right? And I also didn't think I'd be able to have a job or a career that would sustain me or make me feel proud of the work that I was doing. So in the winter of my junior year, I sank into a very deep depression, a dark depression, and I had what I self-diagnosed as an emotional breakdown. I'm going to let you know that at that time, that breakdown was probably one of the best things that could have ever happened to me. Because it was only at that point where I was at an emotionally low point that I could, for the first time, begin to take a real honest look at who I was as a human being. And I started asking myself some big questions. Who are you? What do you want out of life? What do you think you can give to this world? We don't have enough time to get into all the ways in which I tried to answer those questions, but the most salient point to come out of that experience is that I realized that there was nothing wrong with me.